Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Lorethrough, the ultimate Lorethrough for Grim Dawn on RPG Radio today. My name is Winback and I'll be taking you through the stories and picking up where we left off right outside of Tyrant's Hold and a small section of bandit and skeleton-riddled Arkovian docks we didn't get to explore in the last episode. We're going to have to keep it a little short because there is a lot going on in this episode, but the Arkovian docks here are another set of ruins that come from the lost civilization of Arkovia, and there are a number of aether-fueled bandits hiding in the ruins as well. Split off from Cronley and his gang, they've decided to stake out on their own to cause mayhem in other parts of Cairn, and we have a lot of bad guys to clean up. But I'll let the lore do most of the talking for this section of Cairn because there are some pretty profound lore notes hiding out, followed by, well, one that's not so profound. One that's downright murderous, while also seeming a little bit lost. I think that some of the bandits in this whole universe may not have a very good grip on how the apocalypse works and how food lasts when you can't cultivate it on your own. But without further ado, let's flick on the old radio and listen to what the lore has to say.
It is a strange sensation, or should I say lack of it, to witness the world around me without tactile sensation. I hold a forkful to my mouth, yet the weight of the fork is non-existent to my hand. The act itself is just a gesture. Food offers no flavor anymore. In a way that is a blessing, for the stench of decay no longer bothers me either. What remained of the putrid flesh upon my bones is all but rotted away, and with it rots away my mind. Putting pen to paper becomes increasingly difficult as my thoughts wander to emptiness. It is no longer that mystical silence of daydreaming where the mind explores its reaches, but the absolute absence of anything at all. That, I suppose, is the end to this curse. An eternity of emptiness awaits us all. Outside my home, the harbor is alight with the orange glow of massive flames. Judging by the shouts and noise, my countrymen have set themselves to burning the ships. To what end, I cannot say. Perhaps the arson fills them with a small flicker of purpose and life. For me, I still find solace in philosophy and parchment, for as long as my mind remains capable of it. For example, one may consider the curse which befell our lands to be divine punishment handed down upon us for our hubris. I am a skeptic. Yet even I cannot deny the irony of undeath condemning people hell-bent on exterminating necromancy. If the gods truly exist, then they have a sixth sense of humor and justice. The scales of Okama, it appears, have struck a balance in the end. Cronley's lost it, I'm telling you. Bastard's got it in his head that we can just march on over to Devil's Crossing and take the place like they was dying in there. For what? Revenge? Bourbon's small fish and that settlement's low on supplies. They're as good as dead. Taking it is a fool's errand anyway. With the bridge out, it's practically an unassailable fortress. But Darius is gonna throw lives at it. Yeah. We got us them crystals on our backs, making every man feel like 100, but that does us no good when the only way into Devil's Crossing is up a sheer cliff and a bullet to the brains. No, Cronley and I are through. Me and the boys is headed for easier targets. To the west lie big farmlands, no doubt unspoiled by what's going down in the towns and villages. Farmers are easy pickings and the food should last us the year before we pack up and move on again. No sense in sticking around with this disjointed crew no longer. Now who's with me?
So as always, when we look at Arkovia, we get those historical parallels to Rome, to Greece, all the ancient cities of philosophers and rulers, and all the things that could have gone bad definitely did go bad. But even as the boats are burning and the towns cities, whole infrastructure are crumbling down underneath the inevitability of the immortal zombie curse. From the first necromancer himself, there's one guy writing in some parchment, taking some solace in the fact that even though he's going slowly mad and can't eat or feel or understand at the end of all things, he's happy just thinking and writing and observing his surroundings, much as any philosopher should do, but this one in particular seems to have his hands full because he's got the entirety of eternity left to observe, assuming that he can hold on to his sanity for that long. Now, ultimately, the note itself is pretty dark, containing all the subject matter. I mean, what with the riots, the civil unrest, and everybody not being able to die and slowly going crazy. But the philosopher's note does still feel to me, at least as I'm reading it, a little bit hopeful. Like, even though everybody is going to suffer forever, slowly going mad, it definitely still gave off that everything's gonna be okay vibe. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I have a darker sense of consistency than other people, and maybe it is absolutely as frightening as the words make it sound. But more tangibly speaking, there is the bandits hiding out below the Pine Barrens as well, with their souped up aether drugs, crystals shooting out of their backs, and aetherfire handguns with, as it turns out, some pretty hefty damage hidden behind them. So I suggest if you're going to go down there and take on those bandits, that you make quick work of them, or at least have enough healing to deal with the way that those pistols from Rutnick are ready to just blow your face off. Honestly, the character, or the enemy, the bad guy, the bandit, is kind of difficult to deal with on Ultimate, for being honest. Even this character, I had to do some dipping and diving and dodging, ducking and drooping, dangling. Let's get back on track though. The bandits have broken off from Cronley's gang, and they are looking to sow chaos and mischief, as bandits do within any apocalyptic scenario. To be frank, it looks like there are a very large number of bandits down there below the Pine Barrens anyway, and they wanted to gear up for an assault on Homestead. It, at the very least, would cause a number of casualties, even if the Black Legion is already stationed at Homestead. Bandits in the Grimdawn universe are ultimately more chaotic and more random, rambunctious, and ridiculous than even the main factions that you face off against trying to end the world. At least when it comes to the Chthonians and the Ethereals, the end game is clear. One wants to take over the world to inhabit human bodies and live out the lives that they want, and the other just wants to eradicate everything completely and send us all back to the void before everything. So you've got the bandits in between there who are still just completely self-serving, only want to do what's in it for number one, and anything that comes between a bandit and his bounty is definitely going to get the pointy end of the knife or the shooty end of the gun. That's just how bandits work, and that means it is very, very easy to treat them like the younglings in that one scene from Robot Chicken where Anakin is having the time of his life. I don't need to go down that road. You get what I'm saying. Bandits are the worst tier of enemy faction in this entire game, because while they retain their humanity, they retain the worst parts of it. All of the other enemy factions, you can see some form of desperation, some form of looking for community, survival, something in the human condition to drive people to be the bad guys, but bandits are ultimately just bad guys. With our final Pine Barren detour out of the way, though, we can focus up to the Conflagration. The Conflagration is a huge swath of land right outside of Homestead, covered in aether fire, crystals bursting from the ground, tons of aether mutated enemies, and the path hidden behind an enormous chunk of aether crystal requiring quite a bit of dynamite to blow through. This path and all the enemies right between are going to take us to the ether-dominated Port Valbury. If you weren't aware, Port Valbury is the second roguelike or key dungeon in Grim Dawn. This is going to be an enormous amount of space covered in aether enemies and absolutely exploding with ethereal energy, all of which set directly upon you because there will be no other monster or enemy factions in this dungeon. It's all aether all the time, and all of it wants to assimilate you. Now, one of the things when I was making this video I thought might be a little bit light was the amount of lore notes. There are actually only a couple in this entire video because there were only a couple that we picked up while playing it. But such is tradition with the calm before the storm, so you can listen to me ramble on a little bit more about Port Valbury and everything that I can surmise about the location itself, while next episode will be so full of lore notes, in fact, that I may not be able to do any actual talking of my own. It is that much stuff to read. And it's all in Port Valbury, it's all based on the ethereals, it's all absolutely crazy. It's so wild, in fact, that Port Valbury proper will require its entirely own episode. So, come back next time if you want to get inside the city gates and watch the fall of one of the largest human cities in Cairn. But until then, we've still got the outskirts of Port Valbury and quite a bit going on here before we're even let inside. Not only are the outskirts full of actually really cool terrain and enemy variation, but there are some enemies that you'll only be able to find in the outskirts and Port Valbury itself. The ethereal menace took root very early on in the city of Port Valbury, and you can see how fortified and what a stronghold it's become for the ethereals with the level of enemy that you're facing inside the city. You can see the flesh hulks, the massive heaving hulking monstrosities that are a pain in the ass to kill no matter what class you're playing. You can see the mini amalgamations hiding behind some sunken aether crystals. Maybe you decide to throw your shield or light up that aether crystal because you're low, you're running low. Maybe you're just going for some easy farm and an amalgamation pops out just underneath and starts flinging aether shockwaves at you. I don't know about your build, I don't know how you feel about this, but at least when I'm playing my Sentinel, those enemies are always something to worry about. If we're not dodging the shockwaves, if we're not dodging some of the damage, they can absolutely kill me within a matter of a couple seconds. So, the other enemies that you'll see all over the outskirts of Port Valbury are the big ethereal obelisks, the razors of the most hated zombies ever. The flaming kamikaze aether zombies. Not only do the obelisks have 2 health bars that are completely annoying when you kill one half of them, they raise the flaming zombies who ultimately just want to get close to you and have you kill them so that they can explode and take you with them. Everything about Port Valbury is armed, it's angry, and it is just so ready to delete the player from existence. You can even see in a lot of the terrain, the environment around Port Valbury, that the city is built, it's fortified, it's been destroyed, but then it's been reshaped into a fortress. It's been turned into a huge citadel of war for the ethereal conquering of Cairn. And you'll notice that more with the heavily armored troll troops, the casters. There's even mutated manticore that are pretty prevalent in Port Valbury. Everything in this city is built to battle, and that in and of itself is a pretty terrifying concept, especially when all that there is in the apocalyptic afterthought that is Cairn in the Grim Dawn universe, that there is still these huge military forces ready to march from pretty close by. Port Valbury is ultimately a shipping location for Cairn. Before all of the Grim Dawn took place, this was the import-export hub for the region, and the Empire used it as such. It was your modern-day San Francisco, your Bay Area city full of life, full of commerce, full of activity. And now that it's been taken over, it is only full of the husks of people who used to live here. Hence the sheer ridiculous number of enemies always around every corner. Now, earlier in the video, just before we got into the dungeon, there was an ethereal obelisk guarding cannons outside of Homestead. That was the Herald of Flame. The Herald of Flame is a huge ethereal obelisk that has its own unique features as a boss, but it is one of a threesome of ethereal obelisks that herald the ethereal vanguard. Each of the three heralds is found in a place in which the ethereals have started mutating, started terraforming the ground to their liking. Everything is covered in aether fire. There are tons of ethereal enemies between the player and the boss, and the Herald of Flame being the first, the Herald of Flame guarding the cannons from Homestead, is the first. The second of the trio is waiting for us just a few feet in front of the gate to Port Valbury proper. The Herald of the Stars is much more dangerous in my opinion because it is more cold focused, and it does like to freeze you while summoning huge flesh hulks 2 at a time pretty consistently to attack you while you are crowd controlled and dealing with its insanely large health pool. We won't talk about the third herald because that still is some time away as far as side quests and the story of Grim Dawn. The heralds are the living banner of the ethereal armies, and as such they are constantly surrounded by swaths of enemies ready to strike down the player in the name of conquest and calamity.
Men here have mercy. How much more can go wrong in this rotting city? When the dumping grounds in Old Town started overflowing with refuse, people started piling up their garbage in the streets. When that wasn't enough, the heavy rains flooded the dumps and caused the retaining walls to break, unleashing a deluge of filth and rot into the district. Those that haven't already left are getting sick. Soon there won't be anyone left in the oldest part of town. To make matters worse, the city guard has begun rounding up anybody that speaks up about the recent catastrophes. They search our carts and our homes without asking. Many blatantly steal and look us in the eye as they do it, as if daring us to lash out. If you resist, they arrest you. If they suspect you of plotting against the authorities, they arrest you. Is there no justice left in Valbury? I stopped by Owald and Helen's home the other day to find their door broken in and marked with a strange symbol. I'm told Helen was a suspected witch and Owald was taken in for questioning for harboring her all these years. I've never heard a more preposterous thing. I left quickly, lest somebody accuse me too. This was my home, but now it feels like a dark, strange place. It no longer feels safe.